You're listening to Brave by Design, Episode 5 on work-life balance and overcoming addiction to stress with Naketa R. Thigpen. Welcome to Brave by Design. I'm your host, Laura Khalil. I'm an entrepreneur, coach, and speaker. I love thinking big, exploring the power of personal development, and sharing the best strategies from thought leaders and pioneers in business to empower ambitious women and allies to bravely rise and thrive. Let's get started. Hey friends, this is Laura Khalil and welcome to this episode of Brave by Design. I was just re-listening to this episode as I was editing it, and oh my gosh, do I have shivers. Please stay for this entire episode. Naketa has so much wisdom to share with you. If you have been a workaholic, work all the time, struggle to find work-life balance, you are going to get a major clue in this episode as to why you have that behavior and what can be done about it. So I'm very excited for us to kick off. In addition, I wanted to share again some of the warm praise that I'm receiving for the show. If you like the show, leave us a review. This came in email from Danielle. Danielle writes, I am loving the new podcast. You could read the phone book and I'd listen because I love your phone voice, but couple that with the subject matter that is particularly useful and relevant for me, and you've got yourself a winner in my book. Danielle, thank you so much. If I could find a phone book, I absolutely would read it to you. That would be my gift to you. But as a public speaker, I have really learned to train and hone my voice, and certainly I'm not done with that, but I do appreciate it as one of my tools that I have to use, which is why I have the podcast. So before we get started, I want to remind you of one thing. My group coaching program is going to be kicking off on February 22nd. So who is that for? Well, if you do not want this year to be like last year and you're ready to effect profound change and nothing less, I want you to join me for group coaching. This is particularly well suited to individuals who feel stuck at a certain part of your career, are not sure what the next steps are, and want to feel inspired, energized, and really get clarity on where you are going. I will be teaching you how to get clear, and we will be designing your life and roadmap to achieve great things. This is a small group coaching program. It is a quarterly commitment, and we are kicking off on February 22nd. You'll be working directly with me in small group over Zoom. You can learn more about this at forceofbadassery.com. Our early pricing is going away on February 13th. All right, let's get to this episode with the amazing Naketa R. Thigpen. Everyone, welcome to Brave by Design. I am so excited for today's guest. Naketa R. Thigpen, LCSW, is regarded as the #1 balance and relationship advisor in the world. She is the CEO of ThigPro Balance and Relationship Management Institute, a global personal development company headquartered in Philadelphia. She's a transformative empowerment speaker in demand to lead main stage keynotes, create custom business accelerators, coaching circles, live retreats. And Naketa and her team set out every day to partner with analytical creative entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial leaders focused on amplifying the intimacy in their relationships so that they can have the freedom, flexibility, and confidence to thrive in work, life, and love. With ThigPro, you will create your balance and create your joy. I also want to let you know Naketa's book is coming out. Pre-order will be available March 25th of the ebook. It is called Selfish: Permission to Pause, Live, Love, and Laugh Your Way to Joy. I cannot tell you, Naketa, how much I love that title. And we'll talk a little bit about it now. Finally, I want you to know, if you have not already figured out that Naketa is a total badass, she was featured on the Lifestyle Channel, international radio broadcast and the recipient of the NAACP Award as one of 101 top influencers in Philadelphia. You can find Naketa equipping ambitious women in business and a few brave men through her seasonal Balance Boldly podcast and the Intimacy Advantage show, which is coming soon. Connect with Naketa on Instagram at Ask Naketa. I will include that link and a link to her website in the show notes so you can follow her, and you should because she is amazing. Naketa!
Hello! Hello, Laura. I am so honored and thrilled and ecstatic to be here. This is super exciting.
I am so happy to have you here. So our audience doesn't know, you and I met, I don't know, what was that, three or 4 weeks ago. I was on your show, the Balance Boldly podcast. Look for that coming out in mid-Feb, that episode. But you and I feel like we really gelled.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
There's so much juicy, sparkalicious possibility, as one of my good colleagues would say, like, what is possible? There's so many possibilities between us, and it showed up the minute I think we said hello.
It did. And when it hits, it's like the most beautiful thing ever. And so I knew after I was on your show, I was like, Naketa, I have to have you on Brave by Design, because we were talking off the record, so to speak, about this issue of how people have like disassociated lives. There's so many people who go to work, and then we're sort of expected to drop this whole piece of ourselves of, what's going on in our personal life, our extracurricular interests, and come into work sort of with that mask on. And that can feel very disassociating for people. And I know that this is an area that you work intimately in. And so I wanted to talk about that with you today. And I want to start by asking you about you. How did you get into this work? Why are you so passionate about this?
No, thank you. And you're right. It's a necessary conversation for us to have, right? And a lot of it starts with us kind of redefining some of the norms that we've set upon ourselves and kind of falling in, whether it was because of cultural norms, work norms, community norms, whatever that has brought us to this space of feeling like we needed to live in someone else's box. And I think a lot of us can relate to that. That was part of my story and where I came from. I am a licensed clinical social worker by profession for more than 20 years. Trauma specialty was everything that I kind of grew up on, trauma-informed care specifically, especially with families dealing with bereavement, violence, difficulty when their children were in the hospital, and just kind of dealing with this new normal, and all that went into that, sexual abuse, all of it. And because that was my normal, and I was really, really good at what I was doing, I had a really difficult time separating myself from that previous expectation. The older Naketa, or should I say the younger Naketa, had said, when I grow up, someday, one day, I will have my own practice. And when I was really little, that practice was a little bit extraordinary in my thoughts, to say the least. I'm trying not to say over the top, because we want our kids to have over the top imaginations. But I literally said, I'm going to be a pediatrician and have a psychology office on the side of my house. And as I grew up and understood that I did not like organic chemistry when I got to college, and, I did start as pre-med as well, I was like, ooh, this is for the birds. I believe that part to someone else. I triple majored in psych, soc, and anthropology at Drexel, and just kind of delved into the other part of my dream, which was that private practice. So I knew that eventually I would be able to just help families and individuals, period, just kind of understand who they were and why they did the things that they did. The challenge, though, is I fell out of love with that. And I really had a hard time connecting with the fact that that wasn't going to be my story anymore.
So was that really hard for you?
Oh, it was horribly hard. Like, you're talking to like the most analytical, ridiculously geeked out nerd who researches everything. That was like, I really didn't understand what was wrong with me. And I'm the person that helps other people find out what's wrong with them, right? Like,
Yeah.
I had such a challenge with changing my own narrative. And a lot of it, to be quite honest and frank, didn't occur to me until much, much later on in my life. Even after I became an entrepreneur, I was still stuck in this kind of inner child trauma, this survival mode of feeling like I needed to save other people and to be the one to fix each and every person I came across, because I was really just trying to fix my own parents and my own relationships, right? And of course, I didn't know that. Obviously, it wasn't conscious. It was much more unconscious behavior going along the process. But as I moved through and gave myself permission to release those old expectations, even the ones that belong to me, those private ones of, I'm going to have the house by this time, the 2 kids and a dog by that time, when I like released myself from that and said, it's okay that I didn't go about it the right way. I was a young parent. My husband and I have been together since we were 17, friends since 13. We definitely did not wait for marriage to have them babies. And, things were out of order if you go by, cultural norms.
Right. What people say you should do.
Exactly. Things were very, very zigzaggy, and life threw us so many unexpected storms and earthquakes and everything else that you can imagine to really shift us. And for a while, I was in resistance to the shift. Like, what is this? I got to fix this. I got to control it. But the shift was really there to shake up all that kind of calcified chaos that was covering my real purpose. And
oh my God.
You know what I mean, Laura? Like, it was so much from the past traumas. I am a survivor and a thriver from a previous victim of multiple traumas of sexual abuse and violence growing up. So I had that, and then all the mini stat traumas on top of that, in terms of things that it kind of deterred and showed up in my being in all of my relationships, not just with my lover, who's now my husband, but also in friendships and sisterships and situationships and all that. And all those kind of things just created this chaos that calcified over my power, my truth, and my purpose that was already inside me. So for years, I was outside of myself seeking, what am I supposed to do when I grow up? How am I supposed to do this? What's really out here in the world for me to do? Because I felt that I was meant for more and that I was pulled to do greater, in your terms, braver things. But I really had a hard time understanding that it was already inside me. It was just calcified over.
So, Naketa, how did that affect you? I'm just so curious. How did that affect you when you went into your work and you're having trouble accessing yourself?
Ooh, honey.
Here we go.
Look, how much time we got? In the shortest form, the shortest way that I can say that is it made me extremely brilliant at mastering the art of covering up. My compartmentalized game is on 25 out of 10.
Look at her go.
Right? Like, I can compartmentalize and take on the biggest, hugest, most near impossible project and accomplish it. And all that ambition was like makeup over the wounds and the scars, right? Just like, not to diminish anyone who's been in any kind of physical altercation or intimate partner violent relationship, but similar to that brilliance that a woman or man who's in those relationships would have when they are phenomenal people and they're just really trapped in this vicious cycle, horrendous vicious cycle, but they won't let the world know. They'll put makeup on, right? And cover it up, and no one will know, because if you can't see the bruises and the scars, you don't know to ask questions. And I got really good at doing that. My makeup was these crazy overstuffed schedules and ambitious projects, mixed with a lot of overgiving. So because I showed up with this makeup of like, everything's great, apple pie and cherries, no one asked like, hey chick, something's inconsistent here.
Because you're so good at hiding. You're so good at compartmentalizing, concealing. And I imagine there's a lot of people listening to this who feel the same way, you know, who go into work or go into even like, let's say, networking events or interviews or presentations. And they're like, I got to stuff it down. I got to hide it. I got to put it in a box.
Yeah.
And I can't allow anyone to see my weakness. Only armor.
Yep. Only armor, impenetrable armor, always on the outside, but shattered on the inside. Right. And that was my truth for a really long time. And entrepreneurship, quite honestly, Laura, just exposed more of my inadequacies, my insecurities, my feelings of not enough, like all of it. It just exposed it, and it made it a lot harder to cover up with makeup, right? Because, you know, you're an entrepreneur and you get it. You are put in some situations where the only thing that's going to help you elevate, let alone help them bring the fullest value you're meant to bring, is being completely transparent. And it's
on you.
And it's on you completely. Not so much about what the other person is or isn't willing to do. You have to show up and show out fully. And that meant being honest about, yeah, girl, you're brilliant, but you are very unbalanced. You know what I mean? Like, and so hence, you know, me being really interested, not just from an emotional science and behavioral science perspective of balance and work-life balance and relationship management and all of that, but individually as a person, I knew that something was really wrong, and I was kind of slowing down the funnel of greatness that I had to pour out to the world because I didn't really have much left for myself.
So was there a moment that you remember where you said, this is going to change, or where you just felt like, I can't do this anymore?
Yeah, I had, and I think for most people listening, it's a lot of little moments that add up to that one moment where you just say, that's it. Enough is enough, right? And I had a lot of little moments when I was in corporate and working as a clinician and, you know, justifying the crazy 16, 18-hour days and multiple other shifts that you had to pick up because, you know, as a social worker, you don't, you know, make that much money, right?
Yeah.
And no matter how great the work is, you still have to live and take care of your family outside of it, and school and all those kind of stressors that I packed on. All of those created these little shifts and was shaking up, shaking some of that calcified chaos loose a little bit. And then I would play around a little bit with like, well, you know, let me go back to school for my doctorate. So that would be like a chisel at some of the chaos to figure out what it was. Oh, you know, well, I don't know, is network marketing my thing? Or that would be another chisel. Like there were these little smaller chisel-like shifts that I would do. But my complete, utter, this is it, was when I decided to divorce myself, quite honestly.
What do you mean by that?
Well, my old self, which I'll call Kia, because that was my nickname growing up. My full name, Naketa, right? But my nickname was Kia. For, you know, friends and family who knew me of a certain age. Kia was a really nice girl, really smart, really cute, you know, all that good stuff. But I wasn't very kind because I think nice can be really superficial and not transparent.
Oh my God. Say it again.
Right?
Say it again, please.
Right? Nice can be very superficial and not very transparent.
Amen.
You know, we're nice to homeless people that we walk by. We want to help in some kind of way, but we're not taking them home and inviting them in, or sitting down and saying like, you know, here's full carte blanche to my life and my secrets. But when you are kind, you are extremely transparent and open to just trust and go to another level with someone, including yourself. And Kia was not kind to herself. So having all of those layers of me that were broken but stacked on top of each other and kind of hardened into this armor that was painted over with this ambition, right? And this niceness and all of that. When I decided to divorce myself, it wasn't because my husband was blaring in my ear that our relationship wasn't working. I was becoming so distant, physically, intimately, you know, emotionally, sexually, all of it.
Yep.
Girl, I was scheduling our sex days. Like, I mean, just everything was so calculated just to try to grasp some level of control. And he is a creative, so that was not working for him. He does not want scheduled anything,
Right.
let alone that. My kids were just getting older and we raised them to speak their mind, and they were speaking their mind and telling me, listen, like, I don't want to go to these 5,000 activities anymore and all the things that I had packed on our schedule to feel like a good parent,
Right.
and do all those things. And the last straw was probably, I have like 2 or 3 regrets in my life. And the last straw was my last regret. I chose to survive. I completely chose survival modes. And I was quite addicted to the stress of survival mode over my children. My
Okay,
son,
that's real. I just
yeah,
want people to hear that.
yeah,
Addicted to the stress, because that is an addiction.
yeah, it
Yeah.
is. And it was definitely my addiction. And my parents are actual like drug addicts, right? Like heroin and
Mm.
cocaine and alcohol and everything. And that's what I grew up with. And I vowed to not do that and not be them. But I definitely fell into my own trap of addiction, which was the stress of surviving. Like that constant fight or flight. You got to use and I could use some of my gifts in it, right? Like my gift is a problem solver, so, and designing solutions, and I could use that. And I got a high from, there was another problem and I had to figure out a solution. And it was a constant cycle that, of course, if you're a spiritual person, you understand you attract all that you're constantly thinking of, right? Like you want to be in survival mode, the universe is going to throw you lots of opportunities to have to survive, right? And for me, it came down to my son's high school graduation. About a month or so out from graduation, due to the size of the facility they were using or something, they changed the date. And my calendar is my second Bible. I had already had it locked in, and there was no conflict. And when they changed the date, the new date conflicted with a networking conference that I had out of town with my mentor, who was also keynote. So my loyalty issues came up, like I'm loyal to a fault, like all my stuff was coming to a head in that moment. And of course, I didn't want to tell her because I knew that she would just say, oh, don't worry about it. But then people say that, but don't mean it. I had all this people pleasing stuff come up. Everything that I had been battling and trying to just stuff down was come. It was like rising up with a rush wave to the top, because I was forced to, do you go to your son's graduation, his high school graduation, or do you go to this networking conference where you're in the right room of these high-level ambitious women that you have plenty of tools and resources to help and all that stuff. And I was dealing with a lot of scarcity at the time, in the first few years of my business, with, if I don't show up, Bible says a man who does not work does not eat, right? Like I'm taking things out of context. I'm just doing it all. I'm a hot mess, honey. I'm a complete hot mess.
And then and so wait, what did you decide to do?
I went to the conference.
Okay.
I went to the conference. I told my son, I was like, listen, mommy has to work. I got to work out of town. And, my son's used to my crazy schedules. He was literally on my hip. I gave birth to him in undergrad. So he was like used to me being more than ridiculous. And he gave me the standard teen answer of like, okay, that's what you have to do. And I went and I felt sick. I felt nauseous the whole time. My mind was completely not at the conference, right? So I'm like showing up, not fully present.
Right.
My husband or my daughter, I forget who, they sent me a text message, a picture of them like standing on the atrium steps of the graduation. They look nice. I had my son's godmom go in my stead, so he would have a mother figure there with my husband. So in my mind, I'm problem solving, right? Like I planned, like I fixed it. So I talked to my son and I said, hey, congratulations. How was it? And, he's telling me, and I was like, I'm so sorry I can't be there. And this was when I heard his truth pour through his words. He said, no problem, Mom, I understand you had to go to work. But I heard his disappointment. Where before I had justified it, like if I was his dad, nobody would have any questions, right? Like if I'm a man, no one says anything, like, oh, the father has to work, not a big deal. But as the mother, it is expected that you will move mountains and streams and rivers to be there and to do what no one else in the world would sacrifice doing. You're expected to do it. And that was an expectation that I had for myself But because I was living in this limited belief of scarcity mindset, the stress of all of the how can I be in 3 places at once and hurry up and leave the conference and get to the dinner that we went to, all of that
Yep.
coordination and overschedule, that high was powerful, and I tapped into it.
So thank you for sharing that. I really honor that story and you being so vulnerable in sharing this regret that you have, because there are so many people who I'm sure are listening who are feeling pulled in many different directions, and kind of like you, well, they show up at the conference, they show up at work the next day, and they're like, well, this is what I have to do. And they appear, but they're not even appearing as their whole selves. Their mind is somewhere else. Their body is somewhere else. Their emotions are somewhere else. And then they're engaging with people in a professional way, who have no idea that any of this is happening in the background, right? But we're all sort of like silently suffering through it.
Yeah.
And so for those types of folks who feel like, as you put it at the beginning of the show, they are living in someone else's box.
Yeah.
How can we start to take steps towards bringing more authenticity and more vulnerability into our professional lives? Feeling like it's okay to say no, feeling like, you know what, I'm having a tough day. And it has nothing to do with work. Maybe it has to do with an intimacy issue I'm experiencing at home. It could be any million of things, but we're not talking about it. So everyone's just armoring up.
Yeah. No, and thank you, Laura, for providing the space, because I will say this is the first time I have ever shared that story and
Really?
that part of my life. The first time ever.
I'm so honored.
Thank you. It wasn't until I was flushing through my own kind of personal transformation story, which is in the book, which is in Selfish, that it occurred to me that was in fact something that needed to be shared. It was always just kind of this secret thing. And I would go as far as to say a secret shame. Mind you, I was teaching people how to shake the shame, right? Like, and how to let go of those things. But just like the doctor who's the worst patient, right?
Exactly.
I definitely had to maneuver through that. And I would say for anyone out there who is dealing with anything that even feels remotely close to what I expressed to you here, and it doesn't matter if you have kids or dogs or pets or spouses or lovers or not, but if you've had a situation where you feel like this is a recurring theme that's coming up, my remedy is literally for you to get selfish. Literally.
So tell us more about what does that mean? Because people have such a negative connotation around the word selfish. So let's break that down, Naketa. Tell us what that means.
Yeah, it's really in the redefining, so we can change the conversation of what selfishness is. Now, obviously, I don't mean for people to be egoistic and, just so self-absorbed that they are non-empathetic to anyone or compassionate for anyone's situation or issues. I mean that for the same language that we've heard over and over and over again, put the mask on yourself first. We don't do it. We thrive, not thrive, we get a high off of feeling like everyone needs me. I'm taking care of all this stuff. I'm doing all this stuff, right? Like, especially in this world in 2020.
And in our culture, absolutely.
Exactly, right? Like, we're so freaking busy all the time, and it's a badge of honor. As much as we'll complain about it, like we'll complain about it, we'll go home, we'll sit in the freaking driveway for 45 minutes and not want to go in. We have all this wasted space time because we're feeling exhausted, because we're bottomless vessels that have nothing else to give. And it's because we're living in this constant hypocrisy. We're not dealing with our own trauma or issues or scars or wounds, emotional or otherwise, but we're focused on helping other people with theirs, right? Like, we're constantly in this space where there's this push and pull, and to avoid dealing with our own self, we just go harder with giving or showing up for other people. And the reality is, no matter how good you look when you show up or you finish that project and you did it so well, it was probably like 60% of the capacity that you really could have if you were full in the first place. So when I say selfish, I'm really saying it's another level of deeper intimacy in your self-love with yourself, so that you can start to give real self-care, and not the self-care that we give on freaking Instagram photos, right? Like, oh, I'm getting a mani-pedi. I'm over here having dinner with my boo, like the boo that you're not even talking to.
Tell me about it. I am so done with those Instagram quotes.
Listen, yes. You know, I was about to say, listen, Linda, from the little boy. That stays in my head, right? Yeah, no, I'm with you, but that's what we do. Like, that's the life that we've been living for years. And the most quote unquote authentic of us are not being transparent, because we're authentic when it comes to telling someone about themselves and showing up just the way we are. But the way you are is broken. You're not being transparent, and you're not really ready for the transformation, because you're avoiding the real issue inside. Whatever those layered, because it's usually not one, right? Like those layered issues that are there. So when I say be selfish, I mean, it's time to just put up some boundaries. And the boundaries are as simple as saying no to all the opportunities that you created for yourself and overflow when you were trying to medicate your pain.
Oh my gosh. I hope everyone heard that. That is a powerful statement.
Thank you.
So boundaries.
Yeah.
Appropriate boundaries. Can you give the audience, so I always say when I talk to my clients, I say, listen, it's about understanding your boundaries, but then you got to hold the boundary. You have to state it, and then you got to hold it.
Yeah.
Because that's the part that people have trouble with, is understanding how to, at least in my experience. And I'd love to hear more from you around, how do we set healthy boundaries and how do we maintain those?
I think the backing up a little bit, it goes into how we redefine what work-life balance is, right? Like people, and I think you and I had talked about this offline previously, either before or after our podcast, the other podcast. Your balance is not about 50-50, 30-70. It's not about any of that. You've never been in a relationship where it was completely equal. At 1 hour or another, someone was giving or receiving more than the other in energy and resources and time or in attention. Your balance is really just admitting the truth of what you really want, not your old Kia self, your new Naketa, right? Like wherever your new self is right now, not those previous, I'm gonna do this by this age and, you know, whatever. Or my parents said I should be a lawyer, or my sister is constantly telling me I'm not going to be as good as her. You know, whatever it is that you're comparing yourself to, or whatever that previous expectation was, that's old. That's not your truth. Not anymore. Now that, you know, 35, 42, 55, whatever you are, you're a very different human than what you were before, because you've changed due to life circumstances, and hopefully you've also evolved in the process of that. And some of those things have evolved with you and just become shinier representations of what they are. Some of them don't belong in your story anymore, not in this new chapter of your life. So if your new truth is, you know what, I'm going to be a mogul, and I want a portfolio of businesses. If that's your new truth, or, you know, a certain leader that's rising to certain levels where you used to want to be an entrepreneur, whatever your truth is, now you have to create boundaries that allow you to achieve the reality of that truth and keep distractions that pull you away from that truth out. So if my reality is I'm a mogul in the making, Laura, that's my goal. I want to have an institute that's global and, you know, a slew of investments and XYZ, ABC else on my portfolio. Then I can't show up to everybody's third wedding and their fourth divorce party and their fifth baby shower. I can't do it. I need to send you a gift, maybe take you to a private dinner, depending on, you know, how close you are in my network. I can celebrate with you in some other way that's true and kind and real in quality of time, not necessarily the quantity of time. And I have to be okay with the reality that most people aren't used to that. So I'm going to look like the black sheep or the bad guy or the one that is never around. I'm going to look like that to some people for a little while. And that little while could be a year or 5 years or 10, but it's worth it if I'm literally living my balance, living my best life, going after the truth of what I want now and not my old self. And when you do that, the boundaries become easier and easier to hold because they're not just about you wanting to just not go somewhere, right? They're about you living in your purpose and moving towards something that's pulling you forward. Your truth is connected to your purpose. If it's not your purpose exactly, it's connected to it. It's right there and it's pulling you and it's calling you. But if you keep choosing to please everyone and to show up at the parties and to keep signing up because you want to be validated by someone else, so you join 7 leadership boards and all these other things that are just distractions from where you're going, then whose fault is it when your life is ending and you don't have a legacy? It's not everybody else's. It's not all the leadership boards. It's not all the people who invited you to the baby shower. They gave the invitation. You had a choice to say, no, I love you, girl. Hey, bro, I'm feeling you. Congratulations. I'll send something to you in the next 30 days. I'll take you to lunch privately later. It's on you. So part of the positioning, if you will, of getting yourself to that place where you want to create those boundaries is being unapologetic about the fact that you are doing what you're supposed to do and not what other people want you to do.
What I love about this is a few things. First thing is that when you give yourself permission to set and hold those boundaries, you also show other people they have permission to do the same thing.
Exactly.
Okay, so you're the example. And what I hear you saying in this is that when I set a healthy boundary and I really decide on what my priorities are and where the current version of me wants to go, which can change and is okay, that I am bringing my whole self to activities, to work, to the children's events, to the meetings, wherever it may be, because I have fully invested in being there.
So true. The reality is when you start creating, because you don't find it and it doesn't show up on your lap, you create your balance, right? Your truth, your boundaries, you're creating it. This is your reality. When you create your balance, you're on your way to creating your joy. And your joy is literally just, I have a formula for it. It's your balance plus healthy relationships times intimacy squared. That's all it is. That's joy. You don't have to go seek it. You don't have to curate it. You create it. If you created your balance and you're constantly, and that's an everyday thing, right? Like there's some days when the boundaries were a little hard to implement that day, because you wanted to fall into, a different mode yourself, where it was just easier not to have the conflict, but you're constantly like in this space of holding up your truth and creating those boundaries for them. Then having those healthy relationships and creating the deeper connections with them, that's the intimacy. Now, I'm not excluding sexual intimacy, right? Like, because that's all good too, as long as it's consensual and you feel good and all that. But the intimacy is really the deepening of the connection with the people who matter most in your life and in your work. You can create intimacy at work as well. Like, look someone in the eyes when you talk to them. Be kind when you send an email. You don't have to, give a 5-sentence thank you for every little thing, but you can use someone's name. I hate when I open an email and someone just jumps right into it and they don't say, hi, Naketa. I think that's the smallest thing that you could do to be kind. That the most precious thing that someone can hear is their own name. Like, let's be very vain about it. Say my name and I perk up, right?
But it's true. These are small things to foster intimacy over just a transactional exchange.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of times at work, it's all, we get in this mode of transactions. If you're in sales, I need to send out X number of emails a day. I need to cold call X number of people. And everyone has those sort of types of goals. But how about these little things? How about little moments of authenticity and vulnerability and connection? And I'll tell you for myself, because I do kind of all my cold outreach to people. And the simplest thing you can do, spend 5 minutes learning about someone before you get on the call, or you just send the email. Learn about them. Who are they? And then project that back with joy, enthusiasm, and interest. And I'm going to tell you what, and you know this, people appreciate it because you've seen them.
Yes, we do. We always appreciate it because we're seeing that at least you took a few whatever seconds, whether it was to go to the website, to see their digital social media footprint, to look at an article that they recently looked at, whatever it was that you did, and kind of like what we say as an entrepreneur, the professional stalking that we do,
Right.
to check someone out. It matters that you did your due diligence and you cared enough to do it. I'm definitely going to pay more attention to something that I noticed involved me than something that was just like, hey, are you the right person to,
Yes.
to send this SEO form to? I'm like, dude, did you even look at my website? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
definitely be dismissive, but bringing your whole self, Laura, the way that you bring your whole self. You are a well-rounded woman with a lot of expertise in a lot of different areas, and you're able to tap into those expertise when you go and you look at someone's LinkedIn profile. And you start to see like, oh, okay, well, I see Naketa is about love. Well, guess what? I know a lot about that. So
Yep. So let's connect on that. Let's connect on it. And don't be afraid to.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. That's how we actually build real. If people feel disconnected, I always think they feel disconnected at work, they feel lonely at work, they feel like nobody understands them. Listen to what Naketa's saying. Rewind this episode because it's about falling in love and getting to know yourself first.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you can more easily feel that connection to others. But your disconnection to others is simply a reflection of a disconnection to yourself.
Come on, say that twice. I don't think the people in the back heard you.
Okay, one more time. Your disconnection to others is simply a reflection of your disconnection to yourself, to your being, to your essence, to your brilliance and genius on this planet. And I say that I don't care if you're a religious person, spiritual, atheist, you are here for a reason.
That's right.
I believe it. And let's tap into that.
Well said.
Naketa, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you. I love showing up and showing out with you. We definitely have to do this again.
I would love to. Absolutely. I want to thank you for joining me. And remember to subscribe through your favorite app so you can stay up to date. And I would love your review. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave a review and comment on Apple Podcasts. You can also keep in touch with me online. You can find me on LinkedIn, and I'm also on Instagram at Force of Badassery. All that information will be available in the show notes. Until next time, stay brave.